I've always believed that every life deserves a proper ending. Not just a final breath, but a story. Something neat, complete, and true. That's why I started writing obituaries. Not for the dead, but for those who were still living, still walking around town, unaware that their last chapter was already being drafted. It started as a hobby, really. I'd sit in the corner booth at the diner, a cup of black coffee cooling in my hands, and watch people pass by the window. Some faces just called out to me, lonely, tired, or simply out of place. I'd jot down their names if I could catch them, or invent one if I couldn't. Then I'd write. She was known for her kindness, always leaving a little extra in the tip jar. Or, he never missed a Sunday service, rain or shine. I'd imagine the way they'd go, quietly with dignity, or suddenly in a way that would leave the town whispering for weeks. At first it was just words. But words have a way of becoming real, if you believe in them enough. I started to notice how easy it was to predict the end. The old man who always forgot his umbrella, one day he slipped on the wet sidewalk, just as I'd written. The woman with the nervous laugh, her car skidded off the road on a foggy night, just as I'd described. It felt like I was tuning into something deeper, a current running beneath the surface of things. People say small towns are safe, but I know better. They're just quieter about their secrets. I kept my own tucked away, hidden in the folds of my notebook, between grocery lists and crossword puzzles. No one ever asked what I was writing. If they did, I'd smile and say I was working on a novel. In a way, I suppose I was. There's a certain satisfaction in seeing the world bend to your words. I'd walk past the houses of those I'd written about, see the drawn curtains, the black wreaths on the doors, and feel a kind of pride. Not joy exactly, something colder, sharper, like the click of a lock turning or the snap of a newspaper folding shut. I never thought of myself as cruel. I was just giving people the endings they deserved. Sometimes I'd even try to make them beautiful. She passed away surrounded by friends, her favorite song playing softly in the background. I'd hum the tune as I walked by her house at night, watching the lights flicker in the living room. But beauty is a fragile thing. It doesn't take much to shatter it. One wrong word, one careless detail, and the whole story unravels. That's what happened with the last one. I should have known she'd be different. She had a way of looking right through me, as if she could see the words forming behind my eyes. I wrote her obituary anyway, careful and precise, every line a thread in the web I was spinning. She was a creature of habit, always locking her door twice before bed. She loved the scent of lilacs in spring and the sound of rain on the roof. She died peacefully, in her sleep, the world outside washed clean by a midnight storm. I watched her for days, waiting for the right moment. But something was off. She started changing her routine, leaving lights on, checking the locks 3, 4 times. She stopped going to the diner, stopped smiling at the neighbors. It was as if she knew. That's when I realized the story was slipping out of my hands. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of something I couldn't name. Not fear exactly, more like annoyance or maybe curiosity. How would the ending play out if the character refused to follow the script? I sharpened my pencil and started a new page. This time, I'd make sure the story ended the way I wanted. After all, every life deserves a proper ending. And I was the one who decided what that meant. I watched her window from across the street, notebook pressed flat against my knee. The rain had started early that evening, tapping out a nervous rhythm on the hood of my car. She moved through her house like a shadow, pausing at each window, peering out as if she expected someone. I wondered if she could sense me, the way animals sense a storm before it breaks. I wrote another line. She was careful, but not careful enough. The words felt heavy, final. I liked the way they sounded, the way they closed the door on any other possibility. But she kept surprising me. One night I saw her talking to a man on her porch, a neighbor maybe, or a friend. He handed her a small package, and she laughed, the sound muffled by the glass. I watched her tuck the package under her arm and close the door. Her face set in a look I hadn't seen before. Determined, almost defiant. I flipped back through my notes, searching for something I'd missed. I prided myself on details, on getting the little things right. But she was rewriting herself line by line, and I was losing control of the narrative. The next morning, the police were parked outside her house. I watched from a distance as she spoke to them, her hands moving in quick, sharp gestures. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I saw the way she pointed across the street toward me. My heart didn't race. I'd been careful, always careful. Still, I closed my notebook and drove away, the rain washing the street clean behind me. That night, I sat in my apartment, the notebook open on the table. I read over her obituary, the words blurring at the edges. For the first time, I wondered if I'd chosen the wrong ending. Maybe she wasn't meant for a quiet death. Maybe her story was meant to end with a struggle, a twist I hadn't planned. I started to write again, but the words wouldn't come. My hand hovered over the page, pencil poised, waiting for inspiration. Instead, I found myself listening to the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant wail of a siren. The world felt suddenly larger, less predictable. I didn't like it. The next day I saw my own name in the paper, not in the obituaries, but in a small article on the back page. Local writer questioned in series of unusual deaths. There was no photo, just a brief mention of my job at the paper, my habit of writing alone in the diner. I folded the paper carefully, smoothing out the creases. It was almost flattering in a way. Someone had noticed my work, but attention is a dangerous thing. I started seeing the same faces everywhere. The man from her porch, the police officer, even the waitress at the diner. They watched me with a new kind of interest, their eyes lingering a little too long. I kept my head down, but I could feel the story closing in around me, the way a room feels smaller when the door is locked. I tried to write, but the words came out wrong. He was a quiet man, known for his routines. He kept to himself, never causing trouble. I scratched it out, started again. He was misunderstood, a victim of circumstance. No, that wasn't right either. I wasn't a victim, I was the author. But the story was slipping away from me, page by page, and for the first time I wondered how my own obituary would read. The days blurred together after that. I stopped going to the diner. I stopped watching the houses. Instead, I stayed inside, curtains drawn, the notebook always within reach. I listened for footsteps in the hallway, for the knock that would mean the story was over. I told myself I was just being cautious, but the truth was harder to ignore. I was no longer the one writing the ending. One evening, as dusk pressed against the windows, I heard voices outside my door. Calm, practiced voices. Officers, I realized, even before I saw the uniforms through the peephole. They knocked, polite but firm, and I opened the door with my best smile. I'd rehearsed this moment, just in case. I told them I was a writer, that I like to observe people, that I sometimes imagined stories about them. They asked about the notebook, about the names and dates, and the uncanny way my words matched the facts. I answered every question, steady and unblinking. But I could see it in their eyes. They already knew. The woman from across the street had given them my name, my habits, even the way I watched her windows at night. The officers thanked me for my time, but one of them stayed behind, lingering in the hallway as the others left. He looked at me the way a reader looks at the last page of a book, searching for meaning, for closure. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk, the notebook open to a blank page. I tried to write, but my hands shook, the pencil scratching out half-formed sentences. I realized with a kind of cold clarity that I was no longer the author. I was the subject. The next morning they came back with a warrant. They searched my apartment, found the notebooks, the clippings, the careful records of lives and deaths. They read my words aloud, their voices echoing in the empty rooms. I watched them pack away my stories, my endings, my control. Jail is quieter than I expected. The walls are thick, the lights always on. I have no paper, no pencil, nothing but time. Sometimes I imagine the world outside, the rain on the roof, the sound of a typewriter in the next room. But the story is finished now. I am not the writer anymore. I am just another name, another ending, waiting to be written by someone else. And that, I suppose, is the proper ending I always deserved.